Could you tell us why U.S. exports of wheat and barley to Colombia have declined? What's been going on?
I think two main reasons. First, the Mercosur agreement, of which Argentina is a member. Argentina, since 2005, has had duty-free import of wheat to the Colombian wheat market. The other factor that is leading millers to buy wheat other than the U.S., primarily Canadian wheat, is they are anticipating the Canadian Free Trade Agreement being implemented. They're ramping up their purchases of Canadian wheat, knowing it'll be duty-free within a couple months.
So essentially, Colombia has entered agreements with other countries, which allows those other countries to export more easily into Colombia.
Exactly.
At the expense of the United States.
Exactly. We are on an uneven playing field. They have duty-free imports. We are paying anywhere from 10 to 15% duty at this point. We cannot compete.
Thank you. Ms. Blasky, could you address some of the concerns that Mr. Vogt had? I guess to some degree, Mr. Vogt saying all this sounds good. He's not really sure a lot of this is really going to enter into force, or that these provisions are going to be enforceable and actually will occur. Just your reaction.
Yes, Senator. I think probably the most important point to note is that the action plan has a number of commitments which are on a schedule with benchmarks that mainly occur during the course of this year. In fact, the largest group of commitments were to be achieved either by April 22nd or by June 15th, so that we will have the results of the actions of the Colombian government on most of the commitments by June 15th. An additional large group of commitments will be implemented according to the action plan before the end of 2011. So we anticipate that well before the Congress could take action, the President could certify all the requirements for implementing the agreement and actually implement, we will have already passed the deadlines and the benchmarks for the vast majority of the commitments in the action plan. And that provides us with the certainty that they will be implemented.
Or to state differently, if I understand it, I don't want to put words in your mouth, it's the administration will not submit the agreement unless certain provisions in the action plan or take effect, and beyond that will not certify, even presumably after the FTA is passed, will not certify the FTA unless certain provisions that we've been talked about here have been enacted. Is that correct?
Senator Baucus, that is my understanding of the administration's position.
Okay.
I think you've stated it correctly.
Okay.
Two other points that I would mention. One is that when the agreement actually does come into force after it's implemented, the labor chapter in the agreement has very strong commitments by both parties to adopt and enforce in practice laws that protect the fundamental labor rights and to not fail to effectively enforce those laws. So many of the commitments that Colombia has made and are currently enacting will, in fact, be required under the Free Trade Agreement itself. The Free Trade Agreement has an enforcement mechanism which is the same for labor provisions as it is for all of the commercial chapters, and so we're confident that under the agreement there is an enforceable mechanism for maintaining these protections of fundamental labor rights in law and in practice. I think I do have to make a final point because I would not be fair to our interlocutors in Colombia if I didn't. We have confidence that the things that the Santos administration has committed to are things that that president and that administration want to do. They see them as necessary steps. We have not had a difficult negotiation. It's been complex because there were many issues to address, and the issues themselves in many cases are very complex. But it has not been a difficult negotiation of adversaries. It's been rather a problem-solving exercise with an administration that we believe wants to move Colombian society forward in very much the same ways that we've been asking them to act on. And so I think that between the effective dates of the benchmarks in the action plan, occurring mainly before the end of this year and before implementation, the commitments in the free trade agreement itself with respect to labor rights and enforcement of those rights, and finally, the relationship that we've established with the government of Colombia leads us to have confidence that we will see this very profound change, this sea change, as I would describe it, in the situation for workers to enjoy their rights in Colombia.
Mr. Bolt, let me give you a chance to just say a word or two in response. And also, it's my understanding that generally the labor unions in Colombia support this agreement. In fact, one group says that this is the biggest development in labor rights in 20 years. But just to give you equal time, or not quite equal time because my time's expired, if you could be very brief in response to Ms. Pulaski, I'd appreciate it.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. Just to make a few points. Again, as I note also in the written testimony, yes, I believe some of the commitments of the Labor Action Plan are also, if not implemented, would also be violations of Chapter 17. But as Ms. Pulaski noted in her response, many commitments, but not all of those commitments, may be subject to dispute settlement under Chapter 17. The fundamental point I think we're trying to make with regard to the action plan is, though, while there are, I think, a number of very useful provisions with a number of issues that, and as we have said for a long time, I think not only do we want to have these new laws, regulations, institutions in place, but we feel it is, given the horrific history in Colombia, that it is essential to see a period of time by which we can verify that, workers in cooperatives are now actually being hired directly, that the murder rate is actually really going down, that we see a long-term commitment to combating impunity, and that we see well-grounded sentences being produced by the Attorney General's office. That is going to take time, and I think it is important.
My time really has expired. I have a hunch this question is going to arise in some of the others' questions, so you'll get a chance to make that statement. Sir Hatch.